Have you experienced trauma in the past and it makes it so no matter what, for the life of you can't be present around other people? And you have a part of you that really wants to connect and feel comfortable, but in the moment, in those experiences, you come across as cold and standoffish, and no matter what you do, you just can't let your guard down. Well, in this video, I want to explain to you why that's happening. I want to give you a really deep understanding of how trauma affects you. And then at the end of the video, I want to talk about how you can start to heal so you can feel whole, present, and connected once again. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Ruben, and I used to suffer from social anxiety. I was able to overcome it a few years back, and now I help other men fully overcome it as well. Now, about this healing trauma was a huge part of my recovery. It's a really near and dear topic to me. So I want to talk about this whole trauma thing and how it can color your interactions moving forward in your life. A few of the symptoms of trauma are emotional flashbacks. You're flashing back in your head to the traumatic events, or panic attacks. And I remember going through this myself, going through work meetings, being put on the spot to speak, and I would be having emotional flashbacks. I would be having full-on panic attacks, basically during work meetings, totally unable to be present in groups and conversations because I would just be flashing back and panicking the entire time. So I can totally relate to having trauma and having to overcome trauma. And looking back, it took years off of my life. Even in the work setting, there's no way I was going to get promotions and getting to leadership type of roles because my trauma response, my inability to be present in my body during work kind of events and work meetings, it prevented me from gaining any traction and taking the next step in my career, relationships, social situations. I just didn't have the ability to be present. And so it took years off of my life, and there's nothing I could have done. Looking back, there's nothing I could have done. There's no social confidence or any techniques or anything I could have read, books, YouTube, whatever, that was gonna help me heal that trauma deep within me and then be able to move forward in life. And so I wrote an ebook on my experience with trauma, overcoming trauma, how it was affecting my social anxiety. I'll link it below the video. What you can do is you can download that for free and have a read through that. You can get to know my story, all the hurdles, everything I tried to overcome trauma, so you can understand on a deep level what you need to do to heal this trauma on a deep level, overcome that social anxiety for yourself. So you can download that for free and have a read through that. And so I want to describe trauma. I want to describe what it's like for someone who is experiencing trauma. There's a couple of descriptions I want to share here. One description is: trauma is not a story of what happened back then. It is the current imprint of that pain, horror, and fear living inside of people. Trauma is a disease of not being present. And so if that lands for you, what you may be experiencing internally is trauma. And I really want to get into this because a lot of people are under the misconception that trauma only happens to like war veterans or people who've been through horrific accidents and really traumatic events. And so I think most people are familiar with that really traumatic trauma and that PTSD that results from people being war veterans and people being in car accidents, people burn victims and things like that. I want to talk to you about another form of trauma, and that is it's relational trauma. So relational trauma is, say if you had a parent who called you stupid over and over, or you were constantly put down by bullies, even put down by friends. These are little traumas, and the important thing to recognize here, guys, is the little traumas being put down, like subtly put down, passive aggressively put down. Those little traumas can accumulate over time in your body, and what happens is your body will be feeling the same trauma as somebody who went to war. That's how serious this issue is. So if you're thinking to yourself, I never went through anything super traumatic, but my body is just responding in this trauma response, it's in fight or flight all day, then you may be suffering from this type of trauma, relational trauma. And it's really important that you acknowledge that. You don't minimize what you're experiencing internally, because the internal experience can be just as severe as trauma resulting from really traumatic events. So what happens when you go through a traumatic event, it doesn't have to be severely traumatic. It doesn't have to be like that. It could be a little trauma, and let's say you experienced that. You say you were bullied, you're put down by your parents, things like that. What that does is when you go through that experience, there's always two parts to an experience. What happened, how it made you feel, right? What happened, how it made you feel. Extremely, extremely crucial. And so what happens in these moments is your emotional brain, your amygdala, it takes a snapshot. It takes a snapshot as a memory of what happened, right? So it takes a snapshot, but it doesn't store the story. It doesn't store it with a cognitive understanding of what happened. It stores it experientially. What it felt like in your body to go through something like that. It's through the senses, right? So it stores it and it imprints it into your amygdala, the emotional part of your brain. And then moving forward, if your body senses any sort of similar type of experience, similar type of feel, you'll feel this if you go into different social events or any situation that triggers that off. What it's doing is it remembers experientially what that felt, and then it triggers off your fight or flight response. And so what that does is it hijacks your brain over and over again. Any threat, any sense of danger hijacks your brain, and it obliterates your ability to be present, right? Because you're not there, you're in extreme fight or flight. There's no way to be present because the front of your brain has shut down. And what happens is if you don't have the tools to heal that internally, those deep wounds internally, it'll keep hijacking your brain over and over again, and eventually it'll turn into PTSD. Now it's really crucial to heal this on a deep level. That emotional brain that took that snapshot of that traumatic event, it's extremely important to go to the emotional brain and heal that on a deep level, reprocess it on a deep level, change the imprint, change that experientially, how it felt in your body. That memory, it's important to change it experientially and how it shows up in your body. Now remember, there's always two parts to the event. What happened, how it made you feel. You'll never be able to change what happened, but you can change how it made you feel and how it shows up in your body, how it shows up in your current situation. So if you go into a situation now and you have that memory kind of flashback, but you don't have the feelings to go along with it, you won't be triggered into that fight or flight. You won't be triggered into the point where it's like a time warp and you're not present, you're not there anymore. You're gone in your head, you're completely dissociated. That doesn't have to happen if you change the way it made you feel that traumatic event, right? And all that happens by going into your emotional brain, healing it on a deep level and reprocessing. Now, it's really important to realize that, if you go into talk therapy only deals with your understanding of this in the front of your brain, your cognitive level. And this is what happened to me, right? Went to therapy for years, and it was like, Ruben, you went through a traumatic childhood, you went through narcissistic abuse, and you didn't have the environment, a supportive environment to heal it, and process what you were going through, which is great. It's good to understand why I am the way I am, like why my body's responding the way it is, why this trauma response is just overwhelming me and just completely taking me out of the present moment. It's good to understand why, have the context. This is what happened. This is what happened in the past, and this is why you are functioning the way you are in the present moment. But it's not going to heal the emotional brain. It's not going to change that imprint in the emotional brain that sets off those alarms and takes you out of the present moment. And so I know it can be really disheartening when you go through, you do a ton of work, you do the therapy, you do the support groups, maybe you do the 12-step, and you do personal development, you read books and all this type of stuff. But again, you have to go through experientially, and you have to take the event and change the way it made you feel, change the way it shows up in your body, change your physiological response, so you no longer have those flashbacks. And so I hope that helps, guys. I hope that helps you understand that it's not a cognitive process, the healing process. It's not cognitive, it's not intellectual, it is experiential. And I hope that gives you hope again, because it's like, you may have poured your money, your time, your heart, and your soul into these other kinds of tools that haven't worked for you. But maybe you need to get in and reprocess that brain. If you're experiencing that trauma, and you're experiencing it on the level where it's complete terror, panic, you're flashing back, and it is just overwhelming you and taking you out of the present moment completely, like it's like a time warp, like I was saying, it's time to get in there and heal it on an extremely deep level, heal it experientially. All right, so if you found this video helpful, what you can do is you can join my private Facebook group, and we have a great group of guys. Everybody in there is supportive, they're holding space for each other, and they are witnessing each other as they heal through this journey and they overcome this social anxiety. So I'll put the link below the video. You can join the group, and we'd love to have you in there. And if you need a little bit more help with this, if you want to get down on a very deep level, and you want to go through the experiential process and reprocess that emotional brain, that amygdala, what I've done is I've created a free training for you, and I'll also link that below the video. You can go through the free training, and you can see the step-by-step process of what you need to do to reprocess that emotional brain, right? The external event, what happened, how it made you feel. This is going to be the step-by-step process to change how it made you feel and how it shows up in your life moving forward. All right, guys, so I hope that helps, and I hope that restores some hope inside you. All right, peace.